They said I was too expensive. But while my mother was drafting my severance papers, I was quietly filing a business license in my own name. They thought they could replace me with 3 junior engineers. But when the client called me, not them, to save the deal, they finally realized what happens when you fire the wrong woman. And by then, I didn't want the job back. I wanted the company. I'm Elaine Matthews, 34. Until last month, I was the engineering director at my family's company, Matthews Engineering Solutions. For 12 years, I dedicated myself entirely to building their dream. I skipped vacations, turned down high-paying offers from tech giants, and lived out of spreadsheets and blueprints. Then, at our quarterly board meeting, my mother slid a thick manila folder across the table and said, flatly, "You're too expensive." My father? He didn't even look at me. Just stared at his clasped hands like a schoolboy afraid of disappointing the teacher. Kyle, my younger brother, smirked as he tapped his laser pointer against a chart showing salary comparisons. "We can hire 3 juniors for what we pay you," he said casually, like he was discussing office supplies. Nothing personal. Just cost cutting. That smirk. It stayed with me as I packed up my office later that day. 12 years of loyalty, erased by a spreadsheet and a smirk. What I didn't expect, though, was how quickly their desperation would follow. How fast the calls would come. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was always supposed to be the successor. I graduated MIT with honors, majoring in mechanical engineering and minoring in systems design. I had offers from Google, Apple, and Tesla. I remember the day I turned them down like it was yesterday. My dad took me out for burgers at that little dive near the office, the same one he used to take me to as a kid. "You could go anywhere," he said. "But if you join me, we build something together." I said yes without hesitation. I didn't want anywhere else. I wanted home. I wanted legacy. Matthews Engineering had started in our garage when I was just 4. I grew up watching my dad sketch out circuit diagrams on napkins, explaining voltage like it was bedtime poetry. When I showed a knack for numbers and physics, he lit up. "You've got the Matthews gene," he'd say, ruffling my hair. It became our shared dream. By the time I was 25, the garage operation had evolved into a multi-million-dollar firm. We weren't the biggest, but we were respected. We specialized in industrial automation, custom systems that powered factories, warehouses, and energy plants. My father offered me an entry-level role straight out of college. No special treatment, he warned. And I respected that. I worked twice as hard to prove myself. Pulled 14-hour shifts. Picked up slack. Learned to solder, code, and lead, all before I ever managed a team. I rose through the ranks on merit alone. Within 5 years, I was leading our largest team. By year 7, I was named Director of Engineering. My biggest win? The Westbrook contract. A $7.5 million automation deal that vaulted us from respected to industry leader. I spent months on that bid, ran site diagnostics, reverse-engineered bottlenecks, and designed a system that would boost their production output by nearly 30%. Their execs signed the deal on the spot. That night, Dad took me to dinner. "This company will be your legacy someday," he said, raising a glass. We stayed until the restaurant closed. Then came Kyle. 3 years ago, fresh out of his MBA program, he waltzed into our company with a smug grin and a slideshow titled Disruption and Scaling, the Future of Matthews Engineering. I wasn't threatened. Not at first. I believed his business acumen and my technical expertise could complement each other. The Matthews Dream Team, Dad joked during Kyle's welcome dinner. At first, it worked. Kyle brought in some efficiency models and talked endlessly about KPIs and stakeholder alignment. But then the dynamics shifted. Suddenly, my mother, who had always managed operations, started asking Kyle's opinion before mine. I'd pitch a new tech initiative, and she'd turn to Kyle, "What's your take?" As if I hadn't been steering the ship for the last decade. Worse, Dad, my mentor, my champion, began nodding along. I ignored the red flags. I told myself results would speak louder than politics. And for a while, they did. My department continued to exceed every metric. My team was thriving. Clients were loyal. But behind the scenes, Kyle was positioning himself, not as a teammate, but as my replacement. 6 months into Kyle's tenure, I proposed a move into renewable systems, a logical, low-cost expansion of our existing tech. I built a full model, ran simulations, outlined profit margins. When I finished presenting, the room was silent. Then my mother turned to Kyle, "Didn't you mention something similar?" He nodded, flipping to a nearly identical idea, only stripped of its nuance. "We could simplify Elaine's approach," he said, "make it more scalable." And just like that, my innovation became his pitch. When we won the Anderson Systems contract, our biggest opportunity ever, I should have been hailed a hero. Instead, Kyle's name dominated the press release. Kyle's pricing models were key, my mother beamed. His pricing model? It was a one-page spreadsheet I had completely revised. Then came the exclusion. Meetings I wasn't invited to. Budgets slashed without explanation. My department's equipment requests, once approved instantly, now lingered in limbo. Meanwhile, Kyle's marketing team received upgrades weekly. My instincts flared, but I still held out hope that my work would protect me. It didn't. The day they fired me felt like a staged production. My mother, poised and cold. My father, silent and small. Kyle, smug behind his leather portfolio. "You're our biggest overhead," he said, tapping a pie chart with my salary labeled like a tumor. 3 engineers for the price of 1 director. That phrase. That smirk. I will never forget it. They handed me a severance folder and a pre-written NDA. My access had already been revoked. HR had boxes waiting in my office. The betrayal was so calculated, so emotionless, it took days to process. I didn't cry. Not at first. But when Marcus, my most loyal colleague, showed up to help carry my things to the car, I lost it. 12 years. Gone. But that's not where the story ends. Because while they thought they'd erased me from the company, I had already taken steps they didn't see coming. The silence that followed my firing was almost worse than the moment itself. No calls, no texts from my parents. Not even a generic, "best of luck." I was removed from the company's Slack channel within hours. My keycard didn't work the next morning. Everything that once defined my day-to-day was gone, scrubbed clean as if I had never been there. The woman who had saved the company from near collapse after the 2017 recession had been erased like a bad line of code. The weekend after my termination blurred. I didn't leave my apartment. Didn't shower. Didn't eat much. My inbox filled with messages from coworkers, some shocked, others cautiously neutral. Marcus emailed me the minutes after I left, "You deserved better. If you ever start something of your own, I'm there." I didn't respond to any of them, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know who I was anymore. For 12 years, I had been Elaine Matthews, Director of Engineering. That title was woven into every thread of my identity. It was how I introduced myself at conferences, what I put on my luggage tag, even how I justified missing birthdays and holidays. It wasn't just a job. It was who I was. Now, I was just Elaine. On Monday, I forced myself out of bed and opened the severance folder. 6 months' salary, extended health benefits, and a non-compete clause that felt like a leash. 18 months of silence, no competing firm, no poaching clients. They weren't just letting me go. They were sidelining me, exiling me from the field I'd helped elevate. I forwarded the agreement to my lawyer, Sasha, a friend from MIT who had pivoted into employment law. She called within hours. Legally, it's airtight. But that non-compete might be unenforceable under state law, especially considering your termination was under false pretenses. I'd recommend negotiation, not signing. By Tuesday evening, I had stopped grieving and started scheming. I made a list of every client I had brought to the company. Every award. Every innovation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about inventory, of my worth, my proof of impact, my leverage. Then I did something unexpected. I called my father. It went to voicemail. "Dad, it's me," I said. "We need to talk about the Anderson project. Your new team doesn't have the system documentation. The implementation will fail without context. I'll give you one freebie. After that, we renegotiate everything." He didn't call back. But 2 days later, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jessica, my systems architect. "We're falling behind. Kyle's cut QA to hit deadlines. He doesn't understand the architecture. It's chaos." I felt a sting of satisfaction. But it didn't last long. Because the truth was, I still cared. About the team. About the clients. About the integrity of our work. Even if they had tossed me aside, the foundation I had built still mattered to me. That night, I dusted off an old notebook and wrote 3 words on the first page. Build something better. The idea was small at first. Just a whisper. But as the days passed and more messages trickled in from former teammates and frustrated clients, the whisper grew louder. What if I didn't go back? What if I didn't fight for a seat at their table? What if I built my own? The next morning, I called Marcus. "I think I'm starting something," I said. "I was hoping you'd say that," he replied. "Tell me what you need." I spent the next week buried in research. Startup costs. Business licenses. Office space. Funding sources. I reactivated old contacts from MIT, from conferences, from LinkedIn. I reached out to Alexandra Reed, a venture capitalist I'd known in grad school. "I read about what happened," she said. "You're better off out from under their shadow. Send me a plan." By Sunday, I had a rough business proposal for a boutique engineering firm, lean, specialized, and client-centered. The kind of firm where innovation wasn't sacrificed on the altar of cost-cutting. Elaine Matthews Engineering. Bold? Maybe. But I wanted people to know exactly who was behind it. Alexandra called Monday morning. "I'll fund you $1.5 million for a 20% stake. I believe in you, Elaine. And I think the industry's ready for a new leader." With capital secured, things moved quickly. I leased a small industrial space across town. It was rough around the edges, bare concrete floors, flickering fluorescents, but it had character. And it was mine. Marcus resigned 2 weeks later. Jessica followed. A few others quietly pledged to jump ship when their contracts expired. My severance wasn't signed, so the non-compete had no teeth. My lawyer was drafting a counteroffer that would nullify it completely. I spent days assembling equipment, setting up infrastructure, and drafting our first outreach strategy. I didn't have a client yet. But I had a team. And we were ready. Then came the call that changed everything. William Henderson, CEO of Henderson Industrial Systems. "I heard you're out on your own now," he said. "I've followed your work for years. We're accepting bids for a new automation project. Matthews is submitting one, of course. Would you like to compete? I almost dropped the phone. Yes, I said, without hesitation. We'd be honored. The deadline was 3 weeks away. Our infrastructure was barely in place. But we had a shot, and I wasn't going to waste it. The proposal process was grueling. We worked 12-hour days, then went home and worked some more. I pulled late-night sessions with Marcus refining the architecture and stayed up sketching system specs in the margins of napkins. Jessica ran simulation after simulation, fine-tuning the UI and predictive algorithms. We didn't just pitch automation. We pitched transformation, a predictive maintenance system powered by machine learning, capable of reducing downtime by 40%. It was bold, unconventional, and absolutely game-changing. We submitted it with an hour to spare. 3 days later, I got a message from William. I've reviewed your proposal. You didn't just match Matthews, you surpassed them. You've got the contract. The wave of relief, joy, and vindication that washed over me was indescribable. We had done it. Elaine Matthews Engineering wasn't just a concept anymore. It was a company. A competitor. A force. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since before that boardroom ambush. Hope. The ink on our first contract with Henderson Industrial was barely dry when things at Matthews Engineering began to unravel. Industry word spreads fast, and securing Henderson's automation project didn't go unnoticed. I was no longer a former employee, they now saw me as competition. And not just any competition. A threat with momentum. My inbox overflowed. Former clients, curious engineers, venture scouts. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what Elaine Matthews Engineering was about. Our little office space, which had felt cavernous just weeks earlier, now buzzed with energy and purpose. The 7 of us worked shoulder to shoulder, burning the candle at both ends, but no one complained. We were building something that mattered. 2 weeks into the Henderson contract, Marcus leaned across his desk and said, "They've already lost the Anderson account." I blinked. That fast? Jessica confirmed it. Kyle fumbled the rollout. The system crashed mid-demo. I wanted to feel vindicated. To revel in their failure. But mostly, I just felt sad. Anderson Systems had been a milestone project. Something I, had nurtured from blueprint to execution. Watching it crumble under someone else's leadership was like seeing your childhood home gutted by fire. Still, that fire was pushing clients our way. 3 smaller contracts landed in our lap in rapid succession, 2 automation diagnostics, 1 redesign. Each one was a challenge. Each one affirmed our team's grit. With the surge of work, we outgrew the original space within 6 weeks. Alexandra facilitated the lease on a bigger unit in the same complex. This one had natural light, a conference room, and a break room that didn't double as storage. It felt like legitimacy. And just as things were stabilizing, my father called. He didn't leave a voicemail, but the missed call itself was a bombshell. An hour later, he texted, "Can we talk? In person. Just you and me." I stared at the message for 10 minutes before replying, "Tomorrow. 9 a.m. My office." He walked in at 8:55. Same coat, older eyes. A little grayer, a little more stooped. "Thank you for seeing me," he said. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "You have 5 minutes." He didn't try to soften it. "We made a mistake. Kyle overestimated his ability. Your mother thought it was the right move at the time, but the fallout has been severe." Define severe. We're losing clients. Staff. Revenue is down 30%. Investors are nervous. And frankly, your name keeps coming up in every room. "So now I'm useful again," I said, my voice flat. You were always useful, he whispered. We just listened to the wrong voices. He reached into his coat and handed me a folder. It was a proposal, an invitation to return. As a consultant. Part-time. Absolutely not, I said, sliding it back across the desk. His eyes dropped. Elaine, we need your help. Just to stabilize things. I stood up. I gave you 12 years. You replaced me with a spreadsheet. You don't get to ask me for favors now. He left quietly, and I let myself cry after the door closed. Not for what he asked, but for what it confirmed. I would never go back. Not to them. Not to that. That same week, William Henderson sent over a glowing review of our Phase 1 delivery. He even included a referral to 2 partners in the supply chain. Those 2 leads turned into 4 more projects. Within 3 months, we had doubled our headcount. Our third hire was Mei Wong, a design engineer I'd mentored during my tenure at Matthews. She had resigned the same day Kyle announced he'd be leading the next major rollout. I followed you here, she said bluntly, because this is where the real engineering happens. Her first week, she rebuilt a logistics algorithm that saved one client $200,000 in material waste. Elaine Matthews Engineering was no longer just surviving. We were thriving. But with success came new challenges. Alexandra scheduled a quarterly review in our new office. She arrived early, as always, reviewing our KPIs with a critical but impressed eye. You're growing faster than projected, she said. Are you ready for what that means? I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure. You need to protect your culture, she said. As you scale, don't lose what made you different. I took that to heart. We hired slowly, focusing on fit over flash. Every new engineer, every new client, was filtered through a single question: does this move us forward without compromising our vision? And then came the Henderson Expo. It was the biggest event in our industry that year. 100 vendors, live demos, and keynote speakers. And one glaring coincidence: Matthews Engineering had the booth directly across from ours. The awkwardness was palpable. My father avoided eye contact. Kyle scowled from his corner. My mother, who hadn't spoken to me since the boardroom ambush, breezed past with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. Jessica whispered, "Should we brace for drama?" I smiled. No need. We'll let the work speak. Our demo was scheduled for noon. A full automation walkthrough, showcasing predictive diagnostics, real-time failover switching, and customizable UI interfaces. The crowd was huge. Clients, competitors, journalists. Even a few former Matthews employees in the audience. We nailed it. Applause. Handshakes. Business cards. By contrast, Matthew's 2 p.m. demo had audio issues and a script that fell apart halfway through. I watched from the sidelines, not with glee, but with clarity. The legacy I thought I had lost wasn't tied to a company name or a corner office. It was me. That evening, William Henderson handed me a plaque, Vendor of the Year. I've worked with a dozen firms over the past 2 decades, he said in front of the crowd. None have matched the agility, brilliance, and integrity of Elaine Matthews Engineering. The applause was thunderous. Across the room, I saw my mother's face fall. My father clapped quietly. Kyle had already left. I felt no malice, no revenge. Just affirmation. I had found my place. And I had built it myself. 2 weeks after the Henderson Expo, our team was still riding the high. New inquiries poured in daily. Companies I'd dreamed of working with were suddenly reaching out to us. Elaine Matthews Engineering was no longer a whisper in the industry, it was a name with weight. We were invited to bid on projects that had previously been locked behind red tape and old-school relationships. One of those opportunities was with Argent Robotics, a massive player in warehouse automation. I'd tried to get Matthews Engineering into their vendor rotation for years, with no success. But this time, the invite came directly to me via their CTO. We were impressed by what we saw at the Henderson Expo, the email read. We believe your team could bring real innovation to our next-generation platform. Let's talk. I forwarded the email to Marcus and Jessica with a single line, let's do this. The proposal for Argent became our new focus. For 3 weeks, our office transformed into a think tank. Late nights, brainstorming sessions fueled by takeout and too much coffee, whiteboards filled with schematics and algorithms. We didn't just want to meet the brief. We wanted to blow it out of the water. Marcus spearheaded a new modular framework that reduced downtime during maintenance. Jessica designed a sleek UI with real-time diagnostics. May fine-tuned our energy optimization algorithms. Every part of the proposal reflected who we were as a company, innovative, meticulous, bold. In the midst of this, I received an unexpected email. From Kyle. Subject line, urgent, need to talk. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Elaine, I know you don't owe us anything. But we're in trouble. The Anderson fallout triggered an audit. Now we're dealing with a potential lawsuit and several major clients are terminating their contracts. We need guidance. Even temporary. Please. There was a desperation to his tone I'd never heard before. Not from the smirking COO who had smugly ousted me. This was different. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my attorney and archived it. I wasn't going back. Not even to clean up their mess. The next day, Jessica burst into my office holding her phone. Elaine, you need to see this. She turned the screen toward me. It was a LinkedIn post. Matthews Engineering had just laid off 40% of their staff. The comments section was brutal. Former employees venting their frustration, clients expressing doubt, and industry peers speculating about imminent collapse. I closed the app and leaned back in my chair. They brought this on themselves, Jessica said. I know, I replied. But I still hate to see it. That evening, Alexandra called. I'm hearing buzz about Matthews possibly seeking acquisition offers. You've shaken the tree harder than you think. Let's just focus on Argent, I told her. We're not ready for acquisitions, not yet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. That all the pieces were moving toward a confrontation I hadn't planned for. A week later, we submitted our proposal to Argent Robotics. It was the most polished, ambitious package we'd ever put together. The feedback came swiftly. This is exceptional, their CTO wrote. Let's set up a site visit. On the morning of the visit, our team assembled at our office, dressed sharp and buzzing with nervous energy. We walked them through our mock-up, demoed our platform, and fielded questions from a panel of 10 executives. At the end of the tour, the CTO pulled me aside. I have to ask, he said. What's your long-term vision here? You've got a brilliant team, cutting-edge ideas. Where do you see Elaine Matthews Engineering in 5 years? I didn't hesitate. Pushing the boundaries of industrial automation, on our terms. No compromises. No shortcuts. He smiled. Good answer. That afternoon, Argent confirmed we were shortlisted. But the real surprise came that evening, when Alexandra called again. Her voice was sharper this time. I just got off a call with Matthews Engineering's financial advisor. They're hemorrhaging money and scrambling to stay afloat. They've officially started seeking buyers. I froze. Elaine, she continued, I know you said you weren't ready for acquisitions. But this isn't just any acquisition. This is personal. And strategic. We can help you buy them out. I didn't reply immediately. The thought of owning the company that once discarded me was surreal. You don't need to decide now, Alexandra said. But think about it. You've already proven yourself. This could be the final chapter, on your terms. That night, I lay awake replaying every memory. The boardroom betrayal. My father's silence. Kyle's smirk. My mother's cold words. Owning Matthews Engineering wouldn't erase that pain. But it might turn it into something useful. A week later, I sat across from my parents and Kyle in a sterile conference room, this time with Alexandra and 2 lawyers by my side. They looked exhausted. Defeated. We're prepared to make an offer, I said calmly. A fair one. Conditional on full leadership transition and a public rebrand under Elaine Matthews Engineering. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but my father raised a hand. Don't, he said. We did this. And Elaine's earned it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of due diligence, negotiations, and logistics. The acquisition moved faster than anyone expected. And just like that, I owned the company that had once fired me. But more importantly, I owned my story. The ink on the acquisition papers was barely dry when the news broke. Industry blogs, LinkedIn, even a few niche tech publications ran the headline, Elaine Matthews acquires Matthews Engineering, former director turned CEO buys out family firm. The reactions were immediate. Some celebratory, others speculative. But the truth was, I hadn't done it for press. I did it for control. For closure. For my team. For myself. On our first official day operating as a merged entity, I walked into the old Matthews Engineering office, the same one I had been escorted out of months ago, with a new nameplate in my bag. Elaine Matthews, CEO. The office had changed. So had I. There were fewer people now, fewer smiles, more wary glances. I called for a full staff meeting that morning. Engineers, analysts, project managers, even custodial staff crammed into the main conference room. I stood at the front with Marcus and Jessica flanking me. Some of you know me. Some of you worked with me. Others only know the version of me that's been passed around in whispers. A few chuckles. I'm not here to make speeches. I'm here to rebuild. This company isn't dead. It's not dying. It just lost its direction. Together, we're going to find it again. Not with blame. Not with resentment. With innovation, clarity, and leadership. Applause wasn't loud, but it was real. Hopeful. We started with changes that mattered. I restored budgets for the engineering teams and re-established training programs. Marcus led a tech audit to determine which systems were outdated and which projects were salvageable. Jessica began restructuring client relations, starting with apologizing to those burned by mismanagement. Some clients gave us second chances. Others, like Anderson, had moved on. But we didn't waste time chasing the past. We focused forward. My father stopped by my office that afternoon. He lingered in the doorway like a guest in someone else's home. You really did it, he said quietly. I looked up from my desk. I had to. He nodded. It's better this way. I see that now. I should have protected you. There was nothing I could say to that. So I didn't. The next few weeks were a lesson in managing both legacy and progress. The Matthews Engineering name carried weight, but the culture had decayed. I needed to instill a new philosophy. No more top-down mandates from non-technical leadership. No more cost-cutting at the expense of quality. No more undervaluing the people who did the work. We created project pods, small cross-functional teams empowered to solve problems without layers of approval. Every engineer was assigned a mentor. Performance metrics shifted from output quantity to innovation and client satisfaction. Slowly, the energy changed. The office felt alive again. And then came the call from Argent Robotics. They had completed their evaluation and were ready to award the contract. Their CTO didn't bury the lead, Elaine, the board voted unanimously. The contract's yours. I thanked him calmly. Professionally. But when I hung up, I let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Jessica burst into my office seconds later, breathless. Did we get it? I just nodded. She screamed. Then hugged me. Marcus appeared at the doorway and raised an eyebrow. We got Argent, I said. His grin could have lit up the entire floor. Winning Argent was more than just revenue, it was validation. The very clients who once saw me as a daughter of a founder now saw me as the future of industrial automation. But not everyone adjusted smoothly. Kyle, now serving in a stripped-down business development role, chafed at the new hierarchy. He wasn't used to taking orders. One afternoon, he confronted me in my office. You're sidelining me, he said, eyes flashing. I'm aligning your role with your actual skill set, I replied. This isn't about punishment. It's about competence. He left in silence. My mother sent an email a week later. Brief. Formal. She was leaving town for an extended sabbatical. No farewell party. No goodbyes. Fine by me. Alexandra visited one Friday to tour the office. As she walked the halls, employees nodded at her respectfully, but their eyes always flicked back to me. They're starting to believe, she said after we returned to my office. Not just in the company. In you. I'm starting to believe, too, I admitted. He looked different. Less polished, more tired. But still smug. Elaine, he began, I won't take up much of your time. You already have, I replied, motioning for him to sit. He ignored the chair. I need a job, he said flatly. The words hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. I'm sorry. I said slowly. They forced me out. Mom and Dad. The board. I'm out of Matthews Engineering. They're restructuring again after financial losses. They said I've become a liability. I studied his face. For once, there was no smirk. Just a man who had backed the wrong strategy and lost everything. You mean they fired you? I asked. He bristled. It's not like that. It sounds exactly like that. He sighed, pacing. I underestimated what you were building. We all did. Your team is killing it. Henderson. Argent. Now the DoD contract, the board took notice. I remained silent. He hesitated, then continued, I have experience. I could help. You could use someone with business acumen. I stood. Let me stop you right there, Kyle. He flinched. I gave 12 years to Matthews Engineering. You helped fire me with a smile. And now, when your bad decisions catch up with you, you come to me? This is business, he muttered. No, Kyle, I said firmly. This is personal. You made it personal when you stole credit, sabotaged progress, and helped push me out of my own legacy. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. I have a company now. A thriving one. Built on trust, innovation, and mutual respect. You don't belong here. Silence. He finally nodded, something like shame flickering in his eyes. Guess I had to try, he said. I didn't respond. He left without another word. When the door shut behind him, I sat down and stared at my desk. 1 year ago, that man nearly destroyed my career. Now he was the one asking for help. And I had none to give. The following week, I was invited to keynote a major industry conference. Me. The woman they once said was too expensive. My topic? Reclaiming power, innovation, leadership, and the cost of betrayal. I stood before a packed room of 400 engineers, entrepreneurs, and executives. I told them my story, not just the fall, but the rebuild. I talked about the myth of loyalty in family businesses. I explained how betrayal had nearly broken me, and how vision and community saved me. I shared how I rebuilt a company based on values, not politics. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. Backstage, I was approached by an older man in a tailored navy suit. Elaine, that was one of the most honest talks I've ever heard. I'm Charles Norton, board chair at Westfield Technologies. We're in the market for a new automation partner. We scheduled a meeting. That single conversation led to a $6.2 million partnership. Our biggest yet. Meanwhile, Matthews Engineering announced it was seeking strategic alternatives, code for either merging or selling. Within our walls, morale was high. Jessica had been promoted to VP of Systems. Marcus was heading our European expansion. We had moved into a larger office and were now operating across 3 time zones. But even with all the success, I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. I was chasing fulfillment. Late one evening, as I reviewed some concept pitches from our R&D team, Jessica walked in with 2 coffees. "You're still here," she smiled. I grinned. "Habit." She handed me a coffee. "You know what people are saying about you?" "Oh God. Should I be worried?" She laughed. "They're calling you the engineer queen." I laughed out loud. "That sounds like a metal band." "Well, you did build an empire from the ruins of betrayal. You've earned your crown." I paused, then smiled. "I didn't do it alone. You built the table we all wanted a seat at," she said. That night, I walked through our open office space, now humming even at night. Some engineers were still debugging systems. Others were brainstorming on whiteboards. A few were laughing over pizza. And I realized, we hadn't just built a company. We'd built a movement. One born from rejection, powered by resilience, and guided by values. And we were just getting started. It was hard to believe how far things had come. Just a year ago, I was standing in that sterile boardroom, watching the family I'd devoted my career to quietly discard me. Now I was sitting in the glass-walled executive office of a company with my name on the building, literally. Elaine Matthews Engineering had just installed our new signage, bold and blue against the skyline. I sipped my coffee and looked out at the city. The skyline glowed in the early morning light, and with it, a sense of calm settled over me. Not the anxious, uncertain stillness I'd grown used to during the early days of rebuilding, but a settled calm, one born of knowing who I was and what I had built. That morning, Marcus walked in with a wide grin. "Guess who just greenlit their renewal?" My eyebrows lifted. "Don't tell me Henderson." He nodded. "They want to expand. Phase 2 is on the table." I leaned back in my chair, a flood of relief and excitement washing over me. That project had been a cornerstone for our credibility. This next phase meant more than revenue, it meant staying power. Jessica joined us moments later, holding a printed email. And get this, Argent referred us to Valcor Tech. They're bidding out a full automation revamp next quarter. We're on the short list. The following month, we onboarded Argent. The first deliverables went smoothly. Then came the Henderson expansion. Then Rydell Systems. Momentum built like a wave. Our revenue projections doubled. Then tripled. Recruiters began calling us instead of the other way around. But success wasn't the goal. Sustainability was. Impact. Meaning. One evening, I stayed late reviewing designs. Jessica popped in on her way out. "Want company?" she asked. "Always." She pulled up a chair and looked at the prototype spread on the table. "You know," she said, "you could have burned it all down. Bought the company just to dismantle it." I thought about it, I admitted. But then I remembered, I didn't build this to destroy. I built it to prove that we deserve better. She nodded. "We do." The office was quiet. The kind of quiet that held promise, not dread. From ashes, something extraordinary was rising. Not just a company, but a culture. And I wasn't just part of it. I was leading it. The Argent Robotics deal gave us more than just momentum, it gave us leverage. And with leverage, we made moves. I wasted no time building out a dedicated R&D division, something Matthews Engineering had long resisted under my parents' leadership. We weren't just going to meet client expectations anymore, we were going to anticipate future needs and define the standard. We began recruiting from top engineering programs. MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. Not just on resume prestige, but based on passion and creativity. I personally reviewed every candidate's portfolio. If they'd built something meaningful, even in their dorm room, I wanted to see it. The team started to look and feel like the company I'd always imagined, innovative, collaborative, and fearless. But with growth came pushback. One morning, our HR director flagged a disturbing pattern, anonymous complaints about Kyle's conduct. Dismissive remarks. Passive-aggressive emails. Undermining junior staff. I asked for a full report and what I read turned my stomach. Kyle wasn't just struggling with the demotion, he was sabotaging. I called him into my office. He walked in like he owned the place. "Old habits." "Kyle," I said evenly, "we need to talk about your behavior." He scoffed. "You mean the vendetta you've got against me?" "No," I replied calmly. "I mean the complaints. The ones from your own team. The same team you've been undermining for months." "I'm trying to hold people accountable," he said defensively. "They're soft. Entitled. You mean the engineers building systems you don't understand?" I shot back. "The ones delivering contracts that pay your salary?" His face twisted. "I gave this company my best years," he snapped. "And now I'm nothing but a PR puppet." "No," I said, standing. "You were given a chance to contribute. You chose to sabotage. As of today, you're on administrative leave pending an internal investigation." He stormed out. The HR director handled the rest. The following week, I held a company-wide forum. Transparency was my policy. "I know some of you have experienced tension, uncertainty," I began. "We're addressing it. No one is above accountability. Not even family." Applause wasn't thunderous, but it was sincere. We moved forward. Argent's first system went live with zero downtime. Their feedback? Flawless. Then came something I hadn't expected, an email from the Department of Defense. One of our systems engineers had submitted a white paper to a military innovation board. They wanted to schedule a call. I looped in our legal team immediately. After a week of red tape and NDAs, we had our meeting. The project? A collaboration on autonomous logistics systems. The kind of contract that could redefine our company. The catch? We had to build a prototype in 90 days. I gathered my leads. "I won't lie," I told them. "This is huge. And hard. And tight. But I think we can do it, if we're willing to go all in." Marcus leaned forward. "Let's do it." We broke the work into sprints. 18-hour days. Pizza boxes and Red Bulls piling up like artifacts of commitment. I worked alongside them, writing specs, debugging code, reviewing design schematics. I wasn't just the CEO. I was one of them. At the 85-day mark, the prototype ran its first successful test. The client flew in 2 days later. The demonstration was flawless. When the applause came, I looked around the room and realized I didn't feel pride. I felt something deeper, belonging. These people weren't employees. They were my tribe. The DoD awarded us a Phase 2 contract. Revenue soared. We opened a second location. Our name started appearing in industry lists, fastest growing automation firms, top female-led startups to watch. At a tech expo in Chicago, a stranger stopped me. "You're Elaine Matthews, right?" I nodded. "You're the reason I left my last job. Your story gave me courage to start my own consultancy." "Thank you." His words stuck with me. The impact was spreading. Back at headquarters, we faced a different kind of challenge: scaling culture. Rapid growth risks dilution of mission, of values. So we formalized what had once been instinctive. Core values: radical ownership, collaborative curiosity, integrity without exception, people before process. These weren't just buzzwords. They were our filter for hiring, promoting, and leading. HR hosted town halls. Department heads met weekly. We conducted anonymous feedback surveys every quarter. One morning, Jessica burst into my office grinning. "Guess what?" She held up a survey summary. 96% of employees reported feeling valued and empowered. I smiled. We're doing something right. That night, I stayed late again. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The office was quiet. Lights low. My old corner desk, the same one they cleared out a year ago, now had fresh flowers on it, a gift from the engineering team. A card sat beside them. "You didn't just build a company," it read. "You built a home." I sat back, overwhelmed. I had spent so long trying to prove I belonged. Now, I was creating a space where others knew they did. Kyle formally resigned the next week. No farewell message. No apology. I forwarded his departure notice to HR and filed it away with no ceremony. He had been part of the old way. We were building something new. And it was working. By the time we closed out Q3, Elaine Matthews Engineering wasn't just surviving, it was leading. Our systems had been implemented across 6 major clients, including Argent, Henderson, and a recently signed logistics giant on the East Coast. Word was spreading fast. Our backlog was full for the next 2 quarters, and we were onboarding new clients with waitlists. But success attracts attention, and not all of it is welcome. Late one Wednesday, as I was reviewing upcoming procurement reports, our office manager buzzed me. "Elaine, there's someone here to see you." From Matthews Engineering. My stomach turned, but I stayed composed. "Send them in." It was Kyle. Our calendar board was already a patchwork of projects, but we knew how to scale. This wasn't just growth. This was momentum. But with growth came decisions. The team had reached its limit. We needed another office, one on the West Coast to handle the increasing client base. And we needed to build out HR, operations, and onboarding teams. The scrappy startup phase was over. It was time to act like the enterprise we were becoming. I gathered the senior team that Friday. As I stood before them, a familiar surge of adrenaline returned, the kind I used to feel before big board meetings at my family's firm. But this was different. These people were my team. Not just because I signed their checks, but because we had bled and hustled and built something together. "We're entering a new phase," I began. "One that requires structure without losing our soul. We didn't build this company on templates. We built it on values. Innovation. Trust. Excellence. And as we grow, we're going to protect those. Heads nodded around the table. Marcus added, culture is our biggest asset. Let's keep it sacred. Jessica handed out a draft proposal for expansion, offices, hiring plans, and training initiatives. As we reviewed it together, I felt that old sensation, the thrill of problem solving, not for survival, but for evolution. The following week, something unexpected happened. A representative from Matthews Engineering reached out. Not Kyle, not my parents, but a junior staff member named Angela. She'd worked in finance when I was still there. Her email was brief and polite. Would you be willing to meet? I've been asked to explore acquisition possibilities. The board is open to discussion. I didn't respond right away. Not because I wasn't interested, but because the irony needed time to settle. A year ago, I was forced out of that company without so much as a warning. Now they were offering to sell it to me. I consulted with Alexandra, my primary investor. If we acquire them, I said, it can't be charity. It needs to be strategic. She nodded. Look at the client list. The equipment. The staff. Is there synergy? We spent the weekend crunching numbers, mapping overlaps. Surprisingly, there was synergy, particularly in the Midwest region, where Matthews had legacy contracts we hadn't yet penetrated. On Monday, I replied to Angela. I'm open to a conversation. We scheduled a meeting. I arrived at their offices, smaller now, dimmer. The reception desk was unstaffed, and the waiting area looked untouched in months. Angela greeted me, nervous and apologetic. I'll take you to the boardroom, she said. Only 2 board members could attend today. The room felt hauntingly familiar, like visiting the shell of a home you once lived in. My mother wasn't there. Neither was Kyle. Only my father and a new investor sat waiting. Elaine, my father said, standing awkwardly. Thank you for coming. Saturday, let's talk. The investor, a man named Harris, laid out the situation. Matthews Engineering was hemorrhaging clients. Several contracts were expiring, and without engineering leadership, they couldn't compete. They needed capital, leadership, and vision. In other words, me. I'm open to acquisition, I said, but here are the conditions. I want full operational control. Elaine Matthews Engineering will absorb Matthews Engineering. We'll keep some staff, but leadership will be restructured. My father nodded, eyes cast downward. The negotiation took weeks. But in the end, we struck a deal that brought the Matthews name back under my direction, but this time, on my terms. The announcement shook the industry. The firm that fired me was now part of my enterprise. That month, I walked through the old engineering floor. Some familiar faces looked up in surprise. Others smiled. Many had already heard the news and were hopeful. I stood in front of them and said, "You've been working hard. You've endured chaos. But change is here. This company is becoming part of something new. Something better." We offered retention bonuses to key staff and retrained entire departments. Within months, the former Matthews office was a thriving satellite of Elaine Matthews Engineering Midwest. 1 year after my firing, I stood in the same boardroom where they let me go. Only this time, I was the one leading the meeting. I want to end this chapter where it began, I told my leadership team. Because today, we reclaim not just a name, but a future. The applause in the room felt different from any other. Not just polite or respectful, but personal. Later that evening, I called my father. I thought you should hear it from me, I said. The acquisition closed today. There was a pause on the line. I'm proud of you, he said softly. It wasn't enough to erase everything. But it was something. As I hung up, I looked around my office, walls lined with blueprints, awards, team photos, and a single framed quote Jessica had gifted me. They tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds. I smiled. The company I was told was too expensive was now priceless.